Welcome back, everyone! Paradise offers salvation to a dying world, but salvation always demands a sacrifice, and someone is about to start asking the wrong questions. Secret Service agent Xavier Collins has spent years protecting the president and keeping his family safe. But when he stumbles into an incident that shatters everything he thought he knew, Xavier must uncover the truth before it's too late. Before we jump in, please consider subscribing to the channel. And if you're already subscribed, thank you for being here. Now let's get into it. Unable to sleep, Agent Xavier Collins starts his morning routine before heading out for a run. At the end of his route, he swings by the president's home and finds Agent Billy Pace standing watch. Billy says the previous night was uneventful except for the soup Garcia brought, and admits he wants to rush home for the bathroom. He adds that Jane is coming in to cover for him. After their short talk, Xavier runs back. After preparing for work, he finds his daughter, Presley, and his son, James, finishing breakfast. Presley worries about Xavier because he hasn't been sleeping well, but he brushes it off. When Xavier sees his son reading James and the Giant Peach, Xavier reacts strangely before recovering and heading out for work. At the president's residence, Jane is now on duty outside. Xavier heads inside to join the other agents. However, he finds it odd that President Cal Bradford still isn't awake. Xavier goes upstairs to check and finds the president dead on the floor. A flashback cuts to 5 years earlier when Xavier first meets Cal, who's searching for a new lead agent. Cal tests him with small social challenges and immediately approves him. Cal admits he's not the smartest man, but people like and trust him. He's planning for retirement and wants someone competent to protect him. The world, Cal says, is in far worse shape than people know. Back in the present, Xavier confirms Cal is dead and looks around. Seeing the closet safe empty, he orders a full lockdown and tells Jane not to alert Robinson yet. On the nightstand, he spots a pair of women's earrings. Another flashback shows Xavier and Cal chatting during Xavier's early days on the job. Cal vents about his marriage and asks why Xavier and his wife, Terry, don't have more kids. Cal explains that Terry is a scientist beginning a long-term Atlanta project, and they decided to stop at 2. Cal calls it a smart decision. At present, Xavier notices the hallway cameras, then calls Billy back using the coded phrase Christian Lettner. Xavier heads to the control room where Agent Garcia shows him the previous day's logs, starting from the moment Cal woke up. Yesterday, Cal had a tense meeting with Sinatra. Xavier knows this since he was there. Cal then ate dinner alone and spent the evening with Agent Robinson. Cal was still alive when she left. After that, Cal spent time with his father. The footage shows that all doors are sealed at 10:04 p.m. Based on the record, Xavier is the last person to see Cal alive. Another flashback shows the day Xavier saves Cal from a shooter, shouting about how the world deserves to know. Instead of Cal, Xavier got shot. He survives, and Cal visits him in the hospital, joking about the Christian Lettner reference. Grateful, Cal gives Xavier time off and hints at a conversation about Xavier's future. At present, Billy arrives and sees Cal's body and the empty safe. Before the scene becomes overrun with federal personnel, Xavier sends Billy to sweep the property. Billy discovers disturbed bushes under the balcony and dirty footprints where someone likely jumped down and ran. Meanwhile, Garcia finds something critical. The security cameras were offline from 10:42 p.m. to 12:13 a.m. Before the cameras were off, Billy slacked off on the job, sleeping, while young, inexperienced Jane was at the controls. Anyone could have come or gone unnoticed during that time. As Billy checks everything, Jane approaches and asks what's happening. Billy only says she should trust him. As they share a touch, Xavier appears. He instructs Jane to call in an official code red stating that the Wildcat is down. Soon, the residence is flooded with officials headed by Sinatra. As Sinatra calms Cal's father, some begin interviewing the agents present. As Xavier is interviewed, Agent Robinson arrives and asks about Xavier's final conversation with Cal. He responds in a chilly manner, knowing that she's one of the people Cal last met. The previous night's flashback shows a tipsy Cal singing Another Day in Paradise and taking the tablet from the closet safe. Despite the tense atmosphere between them, Cal asks if Xavier will ever forgive him. Xavier recalls the time when he was cleared for top secret intel. There, he learned of the tablet containing the classified Colorado project tied to a looming global catastrophe. Facing Cal, Xavier says Terry named James based on the book James and the Giant Peach. Now, he can never ask his wife about it. He then honestly answers Cal's question, admitting that he'll only forgive Cal once he's able to sleep again, and it will only happen if Cal's dead. Back to the present, Xavier runs home after the interview. Around him, the seemingly perfect place operates differently from normal. Once alone, Xavier pulls out Cal's cigarette pack, which has a bloody X on it, and finds a cigarette with code 8123 22092 written on it. Behind him, a sign notifies that dawn is delayed by 2 hours due to scheduled maintenance. Continuing the previous flashback, Xavier learns of an incoming extinction-level event. In the wake of such a catastrophe, the government builds a massive underground city beneath a mountain in Colorado, and at present, Xavier lives under a giant dome disguised as the sky. 12 years earlier, Samantha Redmond, aka Sinatra, gathered some of the world's most brilliant minds on a private jet heading to Colorado. Among them is Anders, an architect focused on designing self-sustaining communities. When Sinatra asks if he could build an underground city that can survive everything from nuclear disaster to environmental collapse and make it feel like a real American town for 25,000 people, he laughs it off. But once they reach the massive construction site deep underground, Anders realizes Sinatra truly expects him to build paradise. Now, Xavier stares at the number 812092, trying to figure it out. The next morning, everyone seems to be going on with their normal lives, but Sinatra struggles to write Cal's eulogy. Her husband, Tim, wakes up, and she recalls how they first met. Elsewhere, Xavier wakes from a nightmare about the last moments he shared with his wife. Downstairs, Billy makes breakfast for the kids, freeing Xavier to go with Robinson for questioning. In the car, Xavier learns Robinson still doesn't have a suspect or the murder weapon. She says the dad's and wife's alibis check out. They did run an autopsy, but DNA testing is limited to ensuring future generations don't accidentally marry their cousins, so they have nothing yet. When Xavier questions why the woman sleeping with the victim is running the investigation, Robinson defends herself with an alibi. She then reminds him how he shut down the crime scene for 30 minutes. To top it off, the tablet is missing. At the station, Robinson takes Xavier's non-lethal weapon and starts the interrogation. In the billionaire board meeting, Sinatra tells them they'll announce that Cal died peacefully, swear in Henry as the new president, and tighten security until they find answers. After announcing this, Sinatra takes Dr. Gabriella Tarabi to Xavier's ongoing interrogation. They watch behind a two-way mirror as Xavier recounts what happened. Robinson questions him on the delay in calling it in. Xavier says he didn't trust her because of her relationship with Cal. When Robinson asks if he killed the president, he says no. Gabriella steps in and introduces herself, though Xavier already knows she's Cal's therapist. She asks if he's happy Cal is dead, silently instructing him to say yes. When he obeys, she later tells Sinatra he's telling the truth. In a flashback, Sinatra finished grocery shopping with her family when her son, Dylan, suddenly collapsed. Later, Dylan's illness worsens. Unable to let go, it is then that Sinatra meets Gabriella. Back then, Gabriella was known as a world-class therapist and grief specialist. Though initially against it, Sinatra ends up getting Gabriella's help. At present, Sinatra clears Xavier and informs him that Robinson will quietly investigate while the public hears a story about natural causes. Xavier is put on leave and will be reassigned afterward. She reveals that, like him, she lost someone important and urges him to walk away from the case. At school, Presley gets the alert for the town meeting but skips it to follow Jeremy Bradford into the library. He avoids the announcement because the last thing he told his father was that he wished he were gone. The two end up talking about their dads, creating a bond. At the town meeting, Xavier speaks with Jessica Bradford. She admits their marriage was mostly a facade, but she tells him how Cal deeply admired Xavier way back. Soon, the board announces Cal's peaceful passing, and Henry is sworn in to take his place. In another flashback, Sinatra throws herself at work. In a conference, she encounters a presenter who talks of a massive future catastrophe. Sinatra imagines it happening and leaves. Cal, who's among the audience, follows her out and talks to her about her son. Feeling comforted, Sinatra thanks him. Before they can talk more, the previous presenter passes by and Sinatra calls out, asking about what they can do about the catastrophe. The man says they should find the biggest hole that they can and enter it. Though Cal expresses disbelief, Sinatra thinks otherwise and follows the man. At present, the announcement has just ended, and Xavier asks Billy if he knows anything meaningful that requires a 6-digit code down there. However, Billy has no idea. Xavier watches Sinatra and feels off. Billy mentions Sinatra's pretty much the most powerful person there. Xavier believes she's involved and decides to take her down. Returning home, Xavier burns the cigarette with 812092 written on it. The following day, Sinatra and Robinson attend Cal's autopsy. The coroner confirms blunt force trauma from something jagged and heavy, likely a large rock, since soil was found in the wound. He explains how Cal died and that the results of the DNA tests under his nails will take days. Later, Robinson wrestles with grief and guilt while remembering her affair with Cal. Sinatra pressures her for results within 48 hours and demands Cal's missing tablet. At the residence, Robinson gathers Billy, Jane, and Garcia. Forensics found nothing, and everyone close to Cal has an alibi, but the time of death fits the camera blackout window. Garcia says there's a slim chance he can trace a digital footprint of whoever turned off the system. Later, they discover that Billy and Jane were responsible for shutting down the security cameras, and it's not because of murder, but because they were secretly playing We tennis. Furious at their incompetence, Sinatra clears the room. Elsewhere, Xavier visits Gabriella and asks why she told him to say yes during his interrogation. She abruptly decides they should walk. As they do, Gabriella marvels at how far their underground community has come in 3 years. But Xavier only wants answers. She then reveals her office is monitored. Changing the subject, Gabriella recalls Xavier was the first patient to plead the 5th in therapy. Aside from him, Cal was also less forthcoming. The last time she spoke to Cal, he seemed exhausted and burdened. Walking into the grocery store, Gabriella claims it is a community social hub. When he wonders how she knows so much, she reveals she designed the psychological layout for the entire place. Gabriella talks about how Sinatra approached her as a broken woman desperate for help. Talking about loss, the conversation shifts to Xavier's father. Gabriella brings Xavier to Dee's diner for cheese fries. While he scans the room for threats, she interprets every suspicious detail as a sign of ordinary life and grief. Xavier admits Terry died in another city when Cal failed to put her on an evacuation plane. Just then, Maggie, the waitress, serves them cheese fries that contain nuts. The food brings nostalgia, and Xavier finally opens up about his father. A flashback shows Xavier telling his pilot father, Fred, that Terry is pregnant. Fred is thrilled to become a grandfather. Xavier remembers another visit when he got assigned to the vice president's detail. Fred is proud until Xavier notices the tremors. Fred admits he has Parkinson's but hasn't told his employer. Xavier argues that he could endanger people and urges him to retire. However, Fred refuses, for he's a pilot and it's who he is. By the time Xavier becomes part of the president's detail, he meets with his father again. Sharing the news, he brings Fred to see Air Force One. However, on that same day, Xavier forces his father to retire. After reminiscing, he shares that their relationship never fully recovered after that. Hearing this, Gabriella says Xavier's moral compass is exactly why she chose him for Paradise. A flashback reveals the truth that choosing survivors was her job. Thousands lived or died based on her evaluations. Xavier was her wild card, the man who always does the right thing. They soon end up at Gabriella's home, where Gabriella tells him Cal left him a message. Cal told her that if something happens to him, she must find Xavier and warn him that Billy is dangerous. Meanwhile, Billy sits outside Xavier's house with a weapon within reach, watching the windows. Years ago, Billy lived under his abusive uncle. One day, his uncle orders Billy to put down his dog. Instead of listening, Billy shoots him. His actions landed him in a juvenile facility. There, he grows hardened, fighting others. Once out, Billy gets recruited as a mercenary. At present, Billy wakes from a nightmare. Beside him, Jane is awake and excited for that day's carnival. Elsewhere, Xavier wakes with Gabriella, remembering the kids. He admits he doesn't believe Billy is dangerous, but plans to talk to him anyway. Once home, Presley confronts him for not contacting her, but she forgives him and offers breakfast before heading out to help Jeremy with the carnival. Needing to meet Billy, he tells his son to stay with their neighbor, Carl. Heading to Billy's house, he sees him through the window, but then Billy messages him saying he's already at work. Instead of confronting Billy right there, Xavier heads to the station's file room and reads Billy's heavily redacted record. Jane finds him there, but for her, his presence is normal. When Xavier asks her about Billy, she says he seems distracted, even though he's usually excited about the carnival. At the carnival, Jeremy and his band perform a song as a tribute to his father. Billy and Jane later arrive but are intercepted by Robinson. Xavier spots Billy with Sinatra and Robinson while moving through the carnival. Later, Billy finds Presley playing alone. They talk about Jeremy and Billy offers advice. He tells her that he admitted his feelings to Jane during a Wii gaming session. He encourages Presley to do the same. As it gets dark, Xavier and James wait for the next Ferris wheel ride when Gabriella appears. She tells Xavier that Billy is at the funnel cake line. Leaving his son with her, Xavier heads to where Billy is. In a flashback, Xavier recalls arriving in Paradise with Presley and James, being forced to explain that Terry wouldn't join them. It is also the day Xavier first met Billy, who introduced himself as part of the security detail. As time passed, Xavier and Billy spent more time together. They formed a friendship and began hanging out outside work. One time, Xavier invited Billy to meet his kids. So one night, Billy arrives at Xavier's house all dressed up. Upon meeting them, Billy kneels as he introduces himself as Uncle Billy. Presley and James immediately warm up to him. On their third month in Paradise, Xavier and Billy are at the bar with Cal. The atmosphere is somber. Cal made a point about how depression stems from uncertainty. However, Billy argues that honesty matters. Hearing him, Cal arranges an expedition to the surface to assess current conditions. Returning to the present day, Xavier finally confronts Billy about his lies, camera shutdowns, and suspicions surrounding the president's death. Billy insists he would do anything to protect Xavier's children, that they are everything that matters to him. Believing him, Xavier returns to Gabriella, assuring her Billy isn't the one responsible for Cal's death. Later that night, Billy visits the bar. Mark, the bartender, mourns his wife Susan, who was one of the scientists sent by Cal to the surface. However, a flashback reveals that Billy is responsible for the explorers' deaths because Sinatra instructed it. After a drink, Billy heads out and and confronts Sinatra, furious for being sent to kill the explorers. Sinatra explains that the surface is deadly and paradise is the only place for a safe life. Billy calls her a monster, warning her to leave Xavier and the kids alone. Sinatra reminds him he is a killer too, but warns him of others. Billy challenges her, daring her to send anyone his way. Elsewhere, James plays on the court while Xavier and Presley talk. Billy arrives with some sparklers for each of them. He privately talks with Xavier, reassuring him that he didn't kill the president despite every despicable thing he did before. Billy warns Xavier of Sinatra's ruthlessness and says he'll tell him everything tomorrow. For now, he wants one last night as Uncle Billy. After their talk, Presley tells Billy she followed his advice. Curious, Xavier asks about it, but both Billy and Presley joke around that it's none of his business. Later, Billy returns home. Jane waits for him, acting disappointed. Billy drinks the open beer bottle, unaware that it's poisoned. As Billy dies, Jane arranges the scene to resemble an overdose. Watching his last moments, she reminds Billy about asking Sinatra to send him her biggest threat, and she whispers that it's her base. And that's the first half of Paradise Season 1. If you've made it this far, consider hitting that like button and subscribing to the channel. Your support helps us bring you more content like this one. Thanks for being here. And now, back to our regular programs. In 1997, Cal tells his father he's leaving the family business to teach high school. Kane refuses, insisting Cal is meant for politics. He has already planned Cal's political future and is determined that Cal will succeed, even if Kane must drag him kicking and screaming. Present day, Paradise receives a town-wide alert that President Cal Bradford's funeral is in 1 hour. Xavier notices a worker adjusting a nearby lamppost while heading to Carl's house. At Carl's, James plays with the dog Lucy, despite Paradise's no pets rule. Xavier warns Carl that the streetlight wasn't out last night and suspects a camera installation. Carl offers his gratitude for this, promising to repay Xavier for keeping his secret safe. At the funeral, one staff member requests cloud cover, and the tower adjusts it. President Bradford's service begins, and Jeremy speaks, recalling his father's last days and favorite pastimes. In a flashback, Kane wanders into the house and into the study, accompanied by Billy, whom Kane refers to as the sniper. After Kane pulls out a book, Cal reminds him that he can't leave the grounds without notice. Kane says Cal has always been weak, which is why the sniper has to do it. He hints about the 4 who were lost at sea. As Kane leaves, Jeremy follows after saying hurtful words to his father. Returning to the present, after the service, Xavier notices Billy's absence and asks Jane about it. Claiming she can't contact him, they head out to search for Billy. Robinson intercepts them and privately reveals to Xavier that the DNA samples never reached the lab. Believing Sinatra blocked it, Robinson wants them to work together on the case, but Xavier says she's outside his circle of trust. The scene flashes back to Cal and Robinson in bed. Cal recounts how Sinatra recruited his father to help build Paradise. This made him a key player in accessing resources. The conversation shifts to Billy's nickname, Sniper. Hearing this, Robinson laments the current non-existence of weapons. However, Cal hints they still do. At present, Xavier and Jane find Billy dead. Xavier comforts Jane as she feigns grief. Xavier calls in his death, and soon, Billy is wheeled out. In another flashback, Cal recalls his father's words about Sniper and lost at sea. He takes out the tablet and investigates. However, he finds an inaccessible report. Using his father's access, Cal learns that Sinatra instructed Billy to end the 4 explorers, despite the discovery of life above ground. Cal documents his findings of the surface expedition and goes to the library to make a mixtape. After that, Cal visits Gabriella, warning her to be cautious of Billy and to trust only Xavier. On the day he was last alive, Cal confronts Sinatra, insisting people deserve to know about surface survivors. Sinatra refuses, fearing chaos. At present, Xavier meets Robinson at the bar. She explains that Billy was likely poisoned. Xavier struggles with how to act against Sinatra, but Robinson assures him that weapons exist, and she knows how to access them. Elsewhere, Presley finds Jeremy in the golf simulation room, mourning his father. Kane interrupts, recognizing Presley, but Jeremy intervenes, escorting her safely. Returning to the last day Cal was alive, Cal urges Robinson to stay the night. He tells her the location and the access to the weapons, but she still refuses. That same night, Cal visits Kane in the study, who is reading poetry. Kane talks of how he and Cal's mother used a bookmark to signal secret meetings. Now that they're there, Kane mentions how he kept the symbol alive. Noticing that his father's mind is present, Cal asks for Kane's approval. However, Kane claims that Cal never did anything that he didn't do for him. Hearing this, Cal returns to his room and records 812092 on a cigarette. At present, Xavier returns home. He informs Presley of Billy's death and asks her to pack a bag for both her and James. After that, Xavier goes to his neighbor and calls in a favor from Carl, who heads to the tower with a USB drive. Elsewhere, Kane reflects on the harsh words he spoke to Cal last time. Projecting Cal on Jeremy, Kane admits he's actually proud of Cal. Hearing this, Jeremy apologizes, calling Kane Dad. After Jeremy leaves, Kane returns to reading. It is then that he finally remembers seeing her. her. Meanwhile, as Presley prepares, she retrieves Cal's tablet from under her bed. Just outside, Xavier stands in the street, staring at the lamppost, certain that a hidden camera is inside. Sinatra watches him from her office as the artificial sky lights up red with the words announcing that they're lying, a warning triggered by Carl. The scene flashes back to a past where we finally meet Terry. She and Xavier wait outside the principal's office after Presley causes trouble at school. Terry notices Xavier's frustration over her upcoming Atlanta trip. She comforts him, saying he might still make it back in time for a goodbye kiss. Once inside, the principal explains Presley's project, illustrating global food inequity using cake. However, presenting this means one student overeats and vomits, leaving Presley facing a warning. Terry aggressively sides with Presley, while Xavier remains calm. Once outside, Terry claims that sometimes making a scene is the only way and warns Xavier that one day, someone might push him past his limits, forcing him to make a scene. That night at work, Xavier recounts the incident to Cal while attempting to clock out early, but President Bradford requires him to walk him through the Versailles Protocol. Xavier quickly runs down everything they will do at that time. Reaching its end, Xavier demands to know exactly what's happening. Cal can't provide specifics, but advises Xavier to prevent Terry from traveling to Atlanta. However, as they return to the office, Cal learns that Terry is leaving that night. Knowing this, Cal offers the use of his car. Accepting the help, Xavier returns in time for a goodbye kiss. Present day, Carl arrives at the bar where Mark, Presley, and James await. However, Presley plans to leave and recruits James's help. In Sinatra's office, Sinatra confronts Gabriella, ordering her to uncover Xavier's intentions. When Gabriella does, Xavier asks why Sinatra did all those, but Gabriella defends Sinatra, claiming she's not a monster. Xavier believes otherwise and cuts off his wristwatch. Announcing he's after Sinatra, he leaves. Meanwhile, Robinson heads to the sub-basement. With another agent, they unlock the weapons room using Cal's inauguration code. Now armed, she and Xavier assemble a team of trusted agents. Xavier insists Jane join, but Robinson doubts her capability. Later, Xavier rallies his team, exposing Sinatra's lies and the truth behind Cal's and Billy's deaths. Soon, Sinatra learns of the missing weapons. Outside, the messages in the sky escalate, asking everyone if they want to know the truth. At the tower, Sinatra discovers someone has locked them out of the system. Consulting her team, the message can only be removed by rebooting, and doing so means chaos. Feeling cornered, Sinatra contacts Jane. Receiving the order, Jane grabs a gun and heads out. Unaware of Sinatra's orders, Gabriella urges Sinatra to confront Xavier. Meanwhile, Presley finds Jeremy in the library and reveals she has his father's tablet, taken from the bushes near their house. She explains she only wants to find out about her mother. Jeremy agrees to help and brings her to his dad's place. They approach Kane and ask for his help. When Presley sees Kane's bookmark, she recalls seeing that symbol the night she got the tablet. With Kane's help, they gain access to the tablet and learn the truth behind Paradise. After recovering the flares from Air Force One, Xavier's team takes position. The message in the sky asking who Sinatra is, and a countdown begins. At 0, flares are set off. In the chaos, Sinatra orders a complete system shutdown, plunging the city into darkness. The shelter protocol initiates. Sinatra and the others are escorted to safety. As they leave, Presley and Jeremy arrive nearby. There, Jeremy reveals the truth to everyone. Among the crowd, Jane approaches Presley, feigning distress to lure her. Elsewhere, Xavier confronts Sinatra. She admits killing Billy, but denies the president's murder. Pulling out a recorder, Sinatra claims Terry is alive. She says that if Xavier stops his nonsense, she'll help him find her. She admits the 4 explorers sent from Paradise didn't die from nuclear winter, but because they were bringing a survivor back to the bunker. Detecting shortwave transmissions from survivors outside allowed Sinatra to monitor their activity. Xavier has little hope for Terry, given that Atlanta was hit, but Sinatra hints that the president took measures Xavier isn't aware of. On October 28, 1962, the Cuban Missile Crisis ended. Colonel Jeffries returns home to his wife, revealing that a Soviet sub loaded with nuclear missiles disobeyed its launch orders, avoiding further destruction. However, he fears what could happen if the wrong person is in control next time. The flashback shifts to the day of the catastrophe, 3 years before the current Paradise. A supervolcano erupts under the Antarctic ice sheet, resulting in a tsunami moving north. At the White House meeting, they learn that Chinese and Russian forces are mobilizing along multiple borders. The Joint Chiefs recommend moving to DEFCON 3 and soon conclude that it's time for Versailles. Meanwhile, Xavier attempts to contact Terry but fails. After getting Cal's approval, he relays plans to General Kirtley to guide Terry to safety. Xavier then coordinates Presley and James's safety, ensuring they remain with Jeremy. As explosions and nuclear exchanges escalate globally, Cal addresses the nation, calming everyone down with his speech, and soon prepares to leave. But Cal's conscience eats at him, and he chooses to do another live speech. Xavier and the other agents gear up. At the second live speech, Cal reveals the gravity of the situation and urges everyone to spend their remaining time wisely. After the broadcast, Cal quickly leaves under the protection of the secret agents. Once at the airport, Xavier reunites with Presley and James, but Terry hasn't arrived. Forced to accept this, Xavier focuses on his children. Soon, they fly off, and Cal hands Xavier a satellite phone before heading to a meeting. Nuclear launches worldwide, and some are heading their way. Requiring his decisive action, Cal heads back to his office. Sinatra follows him, reminding him that they've run through the possibilities of the situation. Cal motions to the huge briefcase, calling it the nuclear football. He explains the red codes can end everything, but there's another code there. He shows the blue code, explaining that it is a fail-safe created by a colonel after the Cuban Missile Crisis. He says it's capable of disabling all electronics and nuclear devices, essentially shutting down the world. Despite Sinatra's warning of prolonged suffering and possibly compromising the bunker, Cal insists on using it to give people a chance. Meanwhile, Xavier calls Terry. She instructs him to care for their children and expresses love for them, even from afar. As nuclear missiles approach Atlanta, Xavier listens to her final words before the line disconnects. Unknown to him, Cal entered the blue code. Present-day Xavier learns from Sinatra that Cal's actions averted nuclear holocaust, and currently, survivors are communicating and regrouping. From the recorder, Terry's voice is heard, searching for Xavier and the children. Xavier demands her location, but Sinatra forces him to uncover the truth of the president's death and Paradise's internal threats, stipulating that Xavier must comply with her terms for the safety of his daughter and wife. 12 years ago, Trent oversaw the underground construction of Paradise, but as excavation progresses, sickness spreads through the crew. Trent discovers a residue causing it and urges Anders to halt the project. Anders brushes him off, insisting masks and precautions will suffice. When Trent questions the true purpose of Paradise, Anders warns him to forget what he's seen. Fired and desperate, Trent investigates the project and the government's involvement. He warns an old colleague, who dismisses him. Trent learns the full scope of Paradise's connection to the presidency and plots to assassinate President Bradford, almost succeeding on the White House lawn before Xavier and the Secret Service intervene. Present day, Xavier meets with Robinson, revealing that Sinatra didn't kill the president, and the DNA doesn't match anyone in their record. Xavier must identify the real killer, but his focus remains on retrieving his daughter. Outside, Jeremy reads a transcript of the surface expedition to a crowd of residents, detailing the discovery of a survivor. Meanwhile, President Henry Baines addresses the public, assuring the city's safety, and admits foul play is involved in the former president's death. Jane, maintaining her facade of mourning, keeps Presley close. When Sinatra contacts her, Jane asks if she can keep the we for herself. Stunned, Sinatra asks if Jane's insane. Hearing her reaction, Jane says she'll handle the girl and ends the call. Meanwhile, Xavier revisits the crime scene in Cal's bedroom and discovers a recording for Jeremy among the CD collection. Elsewhere, Robinson enlists Gabriella's help in identifying the residents flagged with wristwatch issues on the arrival day. Among the list, Gabriella notices Maggie Davis, whose file claims a severe nut allergy. Yet Maggie has repeatedly eaten cheese fries containing nuts, suggesting she isn't who she says she is. At the diner, they confront Maggie, who admits she was coerced into deception. Back to Xavier, he heads to the library to continue his investigation. Deciphering the code 812092 is for a book, he finds Peter Lawford's The Man Who Kept the Secrets. Opening it, he sees Cal's notes from the days before his death. While reading, Xavier is struck unconscious by the librarian. Soon, Xavier regains consciousness, but he's tied up. Trent reveals that he is the same guy who attempted to assassinate the president before. Trent recounts his journey after getting caught. He was imprisoned in Colorado and escaped during a prison riot following the catastrophic climate event. Aware of Paradise's existence, he posed as a law enforcer and used this to take the identity of one of the arriving residents. After changing his identity, he recruits another person to fill in Maggie's identity. They fool the security to allow them entry, but once inside, he becomes comfortable, even thinking that he deserves this. However, his initial plan to take revenge resurfaces when Cal visits the library. This then led to that night. While Cal was on the balcony, Trent took advantage of the closed surveillance and ambushed Cal. He struck him and dragged him inside. Cal survives long enough to leave clues before Trent finishes him off. At present, Trent says Xavier can tell everyone about it. Taking the book, he leaves Xavier, who pleads with him. Soon, Robinson finds and frees Xavier from his binding. They chase after Trent to the topmost part of Paradise. The two of them corner Trent atop Paradise's catwalk. Realizing there's no escape, Trent laments Paradise's corruption and how it's nothing but a prison and a gravesite. Taking off his bag, he leaps off and meets his death. After what happened, Xavier reports to Sinatra about the president's killer. Confronting her, he demands information on his daughter. Sinatra claims his daughter is gone gone. Xavier goes insane at the news, making quick work of Sinatra's bodyguards. He was about to end her when Jane intervenes, shooting Sinatra, leaving her incapacitated. She tells Xavier that Presley is safe. As Xavier rushes to find his daughter, Jane approaches Sinatra, whispering about how she should have just given her the wee. Xavier reunites with his children. However, he doesn't stay long in paradise. With Cal's notes and a path to locate Terry, Robinson promises to protect his kids while Presley encourages her father to find their mother. Elsewhere, Jeremy listens to his father's mixtape, internalizing the message that the future is his to shape. Gabriella sits alone at the diner, unable to eat, while Henry manages the now leaderless billionaires. Sinatra remains hospitalized, and Jane indulges in the wee she coveted. Soon, Xavier says goodbye and departs paradise by plane, determined to find Terry and discover what remains of the world. And that's season 1 of Paradise. From the White House to Paradise, every secret, betrayal, and twist has led to this moment. Xavier uncovered the truth behind Cal's murder. Paradise revealed itself as a city built on deception, sacrifice, and secrets that run deeper than anyone imagined. And now, with the discovery that Terry is still alive somewhere on the surface, Xavier has left Paradise behind to find her. So here's the question. What do you think is waiting for Xavier on the surface? Drop your theories in the comments below, and if you enjoyed this recap, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for Season 2 coverage. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next one.